I really need to get out to the garden and pick some strawberries, but I just woke up from a nap, which that's not something that I get to do very often. It was a really good, really long nap. So I'm gonna sit here and enjoy my afternoon coffee. I thought it would be a good time for a life update. I'll be sharing some recipes with you guys in this video as well. I've got a strawberry sourdough bread that is so good. My kids beg me to make this all the time. This is one of their favorite things when we have a lot of strawberries coming in, which if you've never grown strawberries in your garden before, highly recommend. They're very easy to get started. They come back every year and they're invasive, so they spread. If you give them a nice big patch, they will spread and they will fill it up in time. There are different varieties of strawberries, so there are different kinds of what's known as June-bearing strawberries. They bear fruit earlier in the season, so spring, maybe into early summer, but then they're finished. And then there are ever-bearing strawberries, so you might get a couple of harvests from those throughout the growing season. I have June-bearing strawberries, and I don't remember the exact variety. I do remember that I got them from Stark Brothers. I've gotten several things as far as fruit trees and different plants from Stark Brothers, and so I've been very pleased with everything that I've gotten from them. Would highly recommend. Let's see, I also need to pick some lettuce from the garden because I'm making a salad for dinner tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be eating said salad because I'm in the middle of a bone broth fast. Well, it's not really fasting because I'm consuming calories. I'm consuming bone broth. But I'm filming this video the day before the feast day of the Ascension. So I didn't do the full 3 days of fasting. I am still nursing the baby. And so I just can't go without eating anything at all. But I'm doing a bone broth fast. So far today I have had 2 quarts, almost 2 quarts of bone broth. I have had 2 oranges and my coffee. So I've had 3 cups of coffee with butter and MCT oil, making sure to get my fat. I've also had Redmond Relight electrolytes. So like I said, I'm still nursing. I just can't go super hardcore with fasting. And in fact, in the past, I haven't even done anything like this bone broth fast while I'm nursing before the baby is eating a lot of solid food. But baby's 14 months old, he is eating more, he's getting his molars in, and whew, that's rough. You know, all of my babies have had a somewhat difficult time teething. They're just pretty fussy, they really want me. Then again, I don't know, maybe all babies have a harder time teething. I'm just super responsive to my babies, so they know that if they are, having teething pain and they fuss, I will hold them and I'll comfort them and nurse them and come to them. But that does shut down. If a baby thinks that his mother will not respond to him, then he will stop fussing. And that's a survival instinct because babies have that built in to where they understand if they're crying and fussing and nobody comes for them, that actually makes them vulnerable to predators. And so as a survival instinct, they will stop. They realize my needs are not going to be met. And they have this built in from the time they're teeny tiny little newborn babies. That's why if you let a baby cry it out, it's not that they're not being sleep trained when they stop crying. They're not trained to be a good little baby. They go into survival mode. It's that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They're going into that freeze state for survival because they figure, well, my mother's not coming, she's abandoned me, and I might die now. If I keep making noise, then the predator will find me. But anyway, I just don't let my babies cry. If they cry, then I go pick them up. Now, when they get to be toddlers, you can tell the difference between a fuss and a cry. Because a fuss, like my toddlers will almost laugh when they're fake crying or they're fussing. Like they'll be half crying, half smiling and laughing, just seeing. And so I just kind of play along, play that game with them and teach them to regulate those emotions. So I'll smile and say, like, I see you smiling. I know you're smiling. And then they laugh and smile back. But anyway, I didn't plan on going on a tangent about babies and toddlers crying. And you likely already know that you need probiotics in your life. And there are a lot of ways to get probiotics from different food or supplements. But when it comes to supplements, you do need to do your research, because a lot of probiotic blends on the market are just haphazard blends of different strains of bacteria, when it actually is really important that you are getting the right strains of keystone bacteria that are essential for good gut health. And my go-to when it comes to intentional probiotics is Seed. Seed is a proprietary blend of probiotics and prebiotic. Seed's DS-01 Daily Synbiotic combines 24 strains of probiotics with prebiotic fiber, and their capsule within a capsule system ensures that the probiotic actually reaches your colon where it needs to go to do all of its work. So another tricky thing with probiotics is a lot of them die during digestion. They're broken down by stomach acid, and they just don't make it into the gut where they can actually get to work. So Seed's capsule in a capsule system looks like this. There is this outer capsule that is full of prebiotic fiber, and inside is the probiotic. Thanks to the ViaCap capsule in a capsule system, Seed DS-01 Synbiotics do not need to be refrigerated. So when you get your Synbiotic in the mail, it will come with this glass jar and also a little travel jar, so you can travel with your Synbiotic and make sure that you don't miss taking your probiotics when you're on vacation. That's actually one of the most important times to make sure you're staying on top of your gut health. And then when it is time to get a refill, you'll just get this little compostable package with more capsules. So you guys know that I love when companies at least make an effort to cut down on plastic waste. I know we're not going to solve all of our plastic and waste problems in a day or even a year, but it does start by at least making an effort. So I do appreciate that. When you use my code HOPEWELL25 at checkout, you will get 25% off Seed's DS-01 Daily Synbiotic. You can click my link or enter my code. You'll find all the details in the description below the video. So just tap the more button and check it out. What other life updates do I have? Okay, well, it is summer break. We finished homeschool a few weeks back, early May. And that's good. That was right on track for us. I like to finish before May, or like that first week of May, because once we start having really nice days, it is almost impossible to keep my kids focused. They want to just be outside, and I'm right there with them. Like, I want to go outside. I want to do all the things in the garden and just everything that we have going on around here in the summer. I want to be outside when we're cutting hay, when we're moving cows. I just don't want to miss any of it. And a lot of times I will just sit outside for hours on nice days. Instead of, taking quiet time inside or whatever and reading, I'll just bring a blanket and sit outside. So in the future, I have actually thought about bumping that up even more as my kids get older, and maybe trying to finish by the end of March or mid-April, because as they get older, I have more help outside and we're able to do more projects. Not to mention, we now have all of the gardens and everything up at the cottage property, and that requires a lot of care and maintenance, especially going into springtime, summer, the growing season. So we'll just have to see about that. It's summertime. I'm not going to do my lesson planning right now. I'm in full on summer relax mode, but I know like end of August, I will start to get the itch to do my planning. And it always happens for me mid-end of August. We have our county fair at the beginning of August, and something about that fair coming and going just signals in my brain that it is time to start thinking about and preparing for the next school year, which our homeschool year does not start until after Labor Day. We just keep it simple, wait until after Labor Day, fully enjoy our summer. So speaking of summer and school, that reminds me of two more things that I wanted to talk about. One is our new homeschool co-op that we're getting running and getting off the ground. And the next is what we have been doing so far with our summer break, something that's kind of been unexpected, unanticipated, kind of. And I guess I'll talk about that first. So I use summers to address anything with my kids where we might need to do a lot of running. So maybe just that's getting our dentist appointments in, getting like our eye doctor checkups in. I have really good dentists and eye doctors and different specialists that I found that understand we like to take a more holistic approach, and they're more holistic themselves. And so we really don't go to the doctor much at all. But when we do, I like to schedule those things at the beginning of our summer break just to get it out of the way. And that way I'm not running here or there in the middle of our school year, because I do follow my lesson plans very closely, especially as my kids get older. We are not unschoolers. We're not really go with the flow people. We have rhythms that allow for some flexibility, but I like to stay on task. And with several kids in a farm, a couple days of running here or there for doctor's appointments can really throw us behind. It's hard to get caught up. So one thing I knew I wanted to work on this summer was I have 2 kids that have palate and jaw issues. Narrow palate, malocclusion, which is crooked teeth, and jaw issues. So it's one of my older kids and one of my younger kids. And I have breastfed all of my kids, but it is interesting to me and makes perfect sense that the one that I breastfed for the shortest amount of time has the narrowest palate, and definitely, yeah, the most pronounced issues that's causing. So that child I only breastfed for 15 months, and it wasn't that I deliberately weaned. I was actually heartbroken and devastated when that nursing relationship ended. I was 7 months pregnant with the next baby, and that was only once that I had babies that close, and that's just how it happened. I didn't plan it. I haven't planned spacing for any of my children. They were just that close, and I suddenly dried up at around 7 months pregnant. I was heartbroken to wean that early. I was also grateful though, because that baby had been a NICU baby, and in the NICU they're like, oh, you could just forget about breastfeeding. It's never going to happen for you, because he had to start on tube feeding through his nose and then move up to bottles or whatever. But that is the quickest way that somebody will get me to be successful at something, is tell me I can't do it and I'm going to do it. So I figured it out, and we had a beautiful nursing relationship until he was 15 months old. Came to a sudden end. But yeah, that child has narrow palate, and the typical dental pipeline, they want him to get braces, but that does not fix the issue, because braces alone just straighten the teeth without addressing the palate, the bite, and all the issues that stem from that, like mouth breathing, especially mouth breathing at night, which that is 8 to 10 hours while you're sleeping that you are mouth breathing. You're not getting adequate oxygen. Causes a lot of systemic health issues with our posture, with everything. Our breath is foundational. In fact, I think we overlook that for a lot of us crunchy moms, and I know I did for years. When I was thinking about health for myself or my kids, what I wanted to look at first as far as their foundation was food. I'm thinking food and water, like clean water. What's in our water? What's in our food? What are we eating? But breath actually needs to come first. We can go a lot longer without eating or drinking than we can without breathing. Breathing is foundational. And problems with the palate, the jaw alignment, and the bite, crooked teeth and all that really affects breathing. So I knew I wanted to address that this summer for these 2 kids. And one of my little guys, it's minor. It's so minor, but when the bite is not aligned, then you just can't form that tight seal to where you're nasal breathing 100% of the time, which we should be breathing through our nose 100% of the time if we are not eating or talking. So right now I'm talking, I gotta breathe through my mouth somewhat when I'm talking. But anyway, I just want to make sure that this little guy's bite gets totally lined up. And the little guy who's having problems, I nursed him for a full 2 years. But the more that I see, more children I have, I'm seeing that I think 2 years is even not enough. And I used to be a lactation consultant in a former life, like a legit lactation consultant. And so I know that the norm for breastfeeding ages, across worldwide is a lot higher than 2 years old. 2 years old is the minimum recommendation from the World Health Organization. They say we should breastfeed for a minimum of 2 years. And I believe that. I don't think, and I have kids I haven't gotten to that 2-year mark with. I have a few that I've done right up to 2 years, and only one that I nursed closer to 3. But the more time goes on, I'm like, man, I just got to see what I can do to get myself nutritionally in a place where I can nurse even longer. I'm just seeing that it's just not enough. These kids, these babies, they're still getting molars, and their jaw is just still growing, developing so much around that 2 years old mark that I think when we stop nursing, I know there are other factors too, like our food and our diet and all, but I think when we stop nursing at that point, it just creates a situation where they can go so quickly into mouth breathing, and that can cause, the palate to narrow and the jaw doesn't develop all the way, like a nice wide jaw. My child that I nursed until almost 3 years old has the widest, most beautiful jaw and bite. And so that's something to take note of. I'm talking about all this, but I don't believe for a second in, deliberate extreme child spacing or anything like that. I'm going to let the babies come. I'm going to let the Lord send babies when He sends them. But I do know, I have experienced in my life that my nutritional status directly affects how long I am able to nurse a baby. I've dried up early in pregnancy, I've dried up mid-pregnancy, and I've had a pregnancy where I did not dry up at all. And my nutritional status was the best in that pregnancy where I didn't dry up at all. So I just want to focus on that. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about was my update with our co-op that we are starting. I live in a rural area. We are about an hour outside of the nearest large city, and that means that we are kind of in a bubble when it comes to homeschooling community options. There are a lot of homeschool families out where I live, but there's just not a lot as far as organized homeschooling community. And this is something that I've really learned by experience, what can go wrong when you just kind of start making homeschool connections based solely on the fact that the other family is also a homeschooling family. So homeschooling does not mean Christian, and that's okay. It doesn't have to mean Christian. Like, Christians don't have a monopoly on homeschooling. That should be obvious if one would think long and hard about that. But that's not something I necessarily thought of in the earlier years of my homeschooling journey. It also it's not synonymous with traditional values, which once again, we live in the United States of America where people believe all sorts of things. So there are all sorts of homeschooling families. And even if you go a step further, among the Christian, more traditional, homeschooling families, there's still a lot of variance there. And when you have just little kids, maybe, like 5, 6, 7 and below, those differences don't matter so much. Like, you're just really wanting to get together for play dates, to be totally honest. And that's what we did when my kids were younger, and it worked great for us. We weren't having these super in-depth, goals and mission statements and conversations. And the kids were just running around and blowing bubbles and playing and jumping. And that was so beautiful in that season of life, just to get together for play dates. But then once you start having older children, the needs do change for the children and for families, because with older children comes, the biggest thing in my experience is technology, phones, iPads, computers, yada, yada, yada. So we have a no tech policy in our home, unsupervised, no unsupervised tech. We have a couple of iPads for our homeschool. I do have a computer. My kids don't ever use a computer. When they get to like 6th, 7th grade, I have programs that they use on the iPad for learning typing. So I have keyboards for the iPads, and I do teach them typing, but I am literally sitting right there guiding them through these things. We just don't do any unsupervised tech whatsoever. We are so strict on that. And there are a lot of homeschooling families who are in that same vein. They're really aware of the dangers with tech. But on the flip side, there are also many homeschooling families that totally give in and go in the way of the world with tech, and their kids are on the iPads and on the phones all day long and playing all the video games. And that becomes really evident when you get into having kids that are a little bit older, and it can be so problematic when you're trying to build a homeschooling community. And then other problems start cropping up as well, like the issue of modesty, which, I'm not here, like I am not a Puritan by any means. I mean, you guys, I wear jeans and shorts and whatever. But I mean, the homeschooling community is not immune from having little 11, 12-year-old girls in crop tops. It's just not. And those things start becoming so evident as your kids get older, as well as if you are religious, the religious convictions, like issues of baptism or end times belief. You might have one family over here who's preparing for the rapture and the other family who doesn't believe in that, and then that can get kind of awkward. I mean, it's just a lot, guys. So as time has gone on, I have realized the need for my family, at least, to have something a little more structured and that is clearly defined as far as these big, hot topic issues. And so this past year was the first year that we were in a more structured co-op. It was a Catholic co-op. I do believe, especially as your kids get older, that if you're a religious person, it's important to stick within those religious convictions, no matter what educational route you're pursuing for your child, whether that is going to school full time or whatever. If you're teaching them one thing religiously at home and you're really diligent and consistent in that, it's inconsistent to then, join an organization that is teaching something contrary to that. So I loved being in a Catholic co-op. That is what we are getting started out here in our little rural area. And I'm so excited because there's already so much interest, and we really have not even advertised or anything like that. It's just by word of mouth. So I'm just excited to see how far this goes this summer, really gauge interest in our community's needs. And I'm sharing this because I just want to encourage you guys out there who feel isolated or maybe feel the loneliness that can come along with homeschooling. And if you're feeling it as a mom, your kids are feeling it too. I just want to reassure you that sending them to school for that reason alone is not the solution, because the loneliness epidemic in schools that are so tech heavy and that mandate having computers and allow phones and iPads, the loneliness and depression and mental health epidemics, it's actually greater in those environments. So that's not the solution. But I would just encourage you to lean into those feelings and needs and create meaningful community. And with that comes thinking about boundaries, thinking about what you want for your kids as far as things like tech and digital safety, as far as religious convictions and things like that. Okay, I realized I went on a whole tangent about correcting my kids' palate and mouth breathing and nasal breathing and didn't even tell you what I was doing for it. But anyway, we've been going into the city for these appointments because it's so hard to find alternative holistic options, but I decided to go with the Myo brace for my two guys who need help with their bite. I looked into the tooth pillow, love the tooth pillow, but they only work with little kids. They don't work with older kids, and I have one older kid. Myo brace has programs for little guys, like toddlers, all the way up to teenagers. That's why we went with Myo brace. So far, it's been very affordable. I just did have to drive a ways to find a dentist who actually does Myo brace. I think that's something that you could Google. I'm not working with them or anything. I'm not, promoting it in that way because we just started, but so far I'm very pleased with my kids' Myo braces. They're doing really well with them, and I'm excited to continue this program throughout the summer, see what kind of progress we make. And the goal is to avoid braces. The goal is to naturally widen their palate and develop their jaw. And there is myofunctional therapy that comes along with these Myo brace appliances. So we're doing that. Summertime is the perfect time for us since we don't have to worry about school. We're working on their myotherapy and everything like that. And I'm also seeing a nervous system chiropractor for the older one because, oh gosh, I don't even know if I want to go into all this here. I'm not going to go into all of this right now, but just making sure that the nervous system is primed and relaxed before we go into these big structural changes is really important. So you can look up find a nervous system chiropractor. I think it's pxdocs.com. I'll put all this stuff that I talk about in this video, I'll put links in the description. But I think that's all I have time for as far as life updates. Here, it's almost been a half an hour that I've just been rambling, and we have a baseball game tonight. It's a late one. It is an 8:15 game. Like, it doesn't start until 8:15. That is so scary, so unacceptable. I want to be laying down. Well, not in the summer because it's still light, but I want to be winding down at 8:15, not going to a place. But that's just how it is when you have older kids. So we've got a late game. I need to get on it, get my stuff done, and get us prepared for the game tonight. But thank you guys for tuning in again this week. It was good to sit down and chat and catch up and share some recipes. And don't forget to check out the offer that Seed has for Hopewell Heights subscribers. All the details are in the description below the video, along with details for my new podcast that is launching in June. All right, well, I'll see you guys next week.